The morning sun broke across the Chattahoochee River like liquid gold, painting the water in shades of amber and rust. Captain Sarah Mitchell stood on the back deck of her late father's house, coffee mug warming her calloused hands, watching a blue heron pick its way through the shallows. The river moved slow here, peaceful, just like her father had always said it would be when she finally came home. But peace, Sarah had learned in 2 tours overseas, was always temporary. She'd been back in Riverside, Georgia for 3 months now, discharged honorably from the Army after 15 years of service, most of it in military intelligence. The small town hadn't changed much since her childhood. Same downtown square with the faded bronze Confederate monument nobody talked about anymore. Same diner where old men solved the world's problems over biscuits and gravy. Same suspicious stares when anyone new came to town, or when someone familiar returned different than they'd left. Sarah was different. War did that. The house sat on 2 acres of prime riverfront property, a simple craftsman-style home her father had built with his own hands in the 70s. It wasn't much to look at: weathered blue paint, a tin roof that sang in the rain, a dock that needed new boards, but it was hers now. Her father, a Vietnam veteran himself, had left it to her when his heart finally gave out last spring. She'd been in Germany when it happened. By the time she made it home, he was already in the ground. She hadn't cried at the funeral. The Army had trained that out of her, or maybe the grief was just too deep to reach the surface. But she'd promised his grave she'd keep the house, keep the land, honor what he'd built. A sharp bark pulled her from her thoughts. Kaiser, her 4-year-old German shepherd, stood at attention near the property line, ears forward, body rigid. He was a military working dog she'd helped train at Fort Benning before her deployment, a washout from the breeding program due to a hip issue that didn't affect his loyalty or intelligence, only his certification. When Sarah retired, she'd adopted him. He was the only soul in Riverside who understood her without words. "What is it, boy?" she called. A black Mercedes SUV was creeping down the dirt road that dead-ended at her property. Unusual. Her nearest neighbor was half a mile upriver, and tourists didn't come down this way. The vehicle stopped at the edge of her driveway, and a man stepped out. He wore expensive clothes, tailored slacks, a polo shirt with a real estate logo, shoes too shiny for country roads. Mid-50s, soft around the middle with the kind of tan that came from golf courses, not labor. He smiled as he approached, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Morning," he called out, waving like they were old friends. "You must be Sarah Mitchell." She set down her coffee and came down the deck stairs. Kaiser followed, close to her left leg, still on alert. "I am," she said. Her voice was neutral, military flat. "Can I help you?" "Name's Brandon Whitmore. I'm with Riverside Property Development." He extended a hand she didn't take. He withdrew it smoothly, still smiling. "Beautiful morning, isn't it? Your father sure picked a gorgeous spot." "He did." "Must be hard maintaining a place like this on your own. Old houses, they need constant work, expensive work." His eyes scanned the property with an appraiser's calculation. "I'm here to make you an offer that might interest you. We're developing the riverfront, luxury condos, a marina, upscale restaurant. Your property is right in the middle of our planned expansion." Sarah felt her jaw tighten. "My property isn't for sale." "Now, I understand this is your family home," Whitmore continued as if she hadn't spoken. "That's why I'm prepared to offer well above market value. We're talking about generational wealth here, Ms. Mitchell. Enough to buy something newer, easier to manage, maybe closer to town." "I said it's not for sale." His smile thinned. "I'm trying to help you here. This house needs a new roof, new plumbing from what I can see. The dock's falling apart. You're just out of the service. You can't have much saved up. 6 months from now, you'll be looking at foreclosure, and the bank will sell it to me anyway for half what I'm offering now." Kaiser growled, low and rumbling. Whitmore stepped back. "That dog should be on a leash." "He is. I'm holding it." Sarah's voice could have cut glass. "You're done here, Mr. Whitmore. Leave my property." "You're making a mistake," he said, his friendly mask slipping. "I'm the only buyer you're going to get. Nobody else wants this falling down shack. And trust me, we get what we want in this town, one way or another. Get out." He left, but slowly, making sure she saw his contempt. The Mercedes kicked up dust as it turned around and headed back toward town. Sarah stood there for a long moment, her hand on Kaiser's head, feeling the familiar tightness in her chest that meant trouble. She'd seen men like Whitmore before, in different uniforms, different countries, but the same underneath. Men who thought power meant they could take whatever they wanted. They usually learned otherwise. That was 14 years ago, not months, years. Sarah wasn't fresh out of the service anymore. She was 43 now, and the house had weathered more storms than just the weather kind. The Riverside diner smelled like bacon grease and burnt coffee, comforting in its consistency. Sarah slid into a booth near the back, Kaiser waiting patiently outside in the shade. She'd come for lunch and to pick up supplies from Hayworth's hardware next door. "Well, look what the cat dragged in," came a voice dripping with artificial sweetness. Melissa Chambers. They'd gone to high school together back when Sarah was skinny and awkward, always with her nose in a book about military history. Melissa had been prom queen, married the quarterback, divorced him for a banker. She worked at town hall now, which in Riverside meant she knew everyone's business. "Melissa," Sarah nodded. "Heard you had some visitors this morning." Melissa poured herself into the opposite side of the booth uninvited. "Brandon Whitmore's been trying to buy up the whole river for 2 years now. Your daddy's place is the last holdout." "Good thing I'm not selling." Melissa laughed, sharp and condescending. "Honey, you can't afford not to. Everyone knows you're barely scraping by. Living off that military pension, doing odd jobs. Pride don't pay the property taxes." The waitress appeared, young, maybe 19, looking uncomfortable. "What can I get you, ma'am?" "Just coffee and the lunch special," Sarah said. "Ma'am," Melissa repeated after the waitress left. "Look at you still playing soldier. You know people talk, they say you're different now, cold, hard, that you stare off into space sometimes like you're somewhere else." She leaned in, voice dropping. "PTSD, right? I saw a documentary about it." Sarah's hand stayed flat on the table, perfectly still. A control technique she'd learned. When you wanted to break something, you kept your hands very still. "You think you're better than everyone here because you went off to war," Melissa continued. "But you came back to nothing. No husband, no kids, no real job. Just that falling down house and a dog. At least your daddy had the sense to work at the mill. You don't even fit in here anymore." "Are we done?" "I'm trying to help you, Sarah. You always were stubborn. Whitmore's connected. He's got the mayor, the planning commission, half the county in his pocket. You think you can stand up to that?" Melissa stood, smoothing her skirt. "Sell while you can still get something for it, before things get unpleasant." She left a $5 bill on the table. "For your coffee. I know times are tight." Sarah sat alone for several minutes, breathing slowly, counting to 10 in 4 different languages. The waitress brought coffee and meatloaf, apologizing with her eyes for what she'd witnessed. "Don't worry about it," Sarah told her gently. "And keep her money. I pay my own way." She ate slowly, methodically, thinking. Melissa was right about one thing: Whitmore was connected. Sarah had done her research. The development project had the backing of serious money, probably from Atlanta investors looking to capitalize on the river. The town council had already approved preliminary plans. Her property was the missing piece. But they'd underestimated something important. Sarah Mitchell hadn't spent 15 years in Army intelligence learning to give up. She'd spent 15 years learning how to fight battles before they became shooting wars, how to gather information, how to find leverage, how to wait. She could wait. That evening, Sarah walked the property line with Kaiser, checking fences and thinking. The sun hung low over the river, turning everything golden and soft. This was her favorite time of day. When the world went quiet, and she could almost hear her father's voice in the rustle of the pines. She'd been 11 when he taught her to fish from that dock, 17 when they replaced the boards together, her hands blistering as she learned to swing a hammer properly. 22 when she told him she'd enlisted, and he'd nodded once, eyes proud, and said, "You'll make a good soldier. You've got your mother's brains and my stubbornness." Her mother had died when Sarah was 6, cancer. It had been just her and her father after that, two quiet souls in a house by the river. Kaiser's ears pricked up. A truck was coming down the road, moving faster than Whitmore's Mercedes had. It was a jacked-up Ford F-250, Confederate flag on the back window, modified exhaust rumbling like thunder. 3 men climbed out, early 20s, wearing camo and attitude, the kind of boys who peaked in high school and spent their 20s angry about it. The leader was thick-necked and sunburned. "You Sarah Mitchell?" "I am." "We got a message from Mr. Whitmore. Says you're being unreasonable about his offer. Says maybe you need help understanding how things work around here." Sarah crossed her arms, "And he sent children to explain it to me." The other two laughed nervously, but the leader's face reddened. "You think you're tough because you were in the army. My uncle was a Marine. He says women soldiers are just diversity hires. Can't do real work." "Your uncle sounds insecure." "We're here to make things clear," he said, stepping closer. "You sell that house or things are gonna get hard for you, real hard. Maybe your dog goes missing. Maybe your truck breaks down. Maybe your house catches fire some night when you're in town." Kaiser growled, showing teeth. "That's a threat," Sarah said calmly. "Against me and my property. You want to reconsider your next words carefully." "Or what?" the leader sneered. "You gonna call Sheriff Dawson? He plays golf with Mr. Whitmore every Sunday. You're all alone out here, lady. No backup. No husband to protect you. Just you and that mutt." He turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and your daddy. Everyone knows he died broke. Heart attack because he couldn't handle the stress of keeping this dump. Don't make the same mistake he did." They climbed back in the truck, spraying gravel as they spun out. Sarah stood very still, watching them go. Kaiser pressed against her leg, sensing her tension. Inside her mind, she was already planning, already moving pieces on a board they didn't know existed. They thought she was alone. They thought she was weak. They thought a woman couldn't stand against men with money and connections. They were going to learn differently. But tonight, she let herself feel the isolation, the weight of it, the truth in what Melissa had said. She didn't fit here anymore. The girl who'd left Riverside 18 years ago had been naive enough to believe service meant respect. The woman who'd come back knew respect was taken, not given. She'd been ambushed in Kandahar, survived a mortar attack in Baghdad, interrogated prisoners who'd done unspeakable things. She'd been shot at, bombed, and threatened by people far more dangerous than Brandon Whitmore and his local thugs. But standing in her father's yard, watching the sun set over the river he'd loved, Sarah felt something she rarely allowed herself to feel. She felt afraid. Not of them, of what she might have to become to protect this place. Of the soldier she'd worked so hard to leave behind, the one who knew 100 ways to destroy an enemy and had used more than a few. Kaiser whined softly. "I know, boy," she whispered, kneeling to press her forehead against his. "I know." The river moved on, indifferent to human trouble, carrying its secrets downstream like it always had. Tomorrow she'd start fighting back. Tonight she'd let herself remember why she was fighting at all. The lawyer's office in downtown Riverside looked exactly like Sarah expected. Wood paneling from 1985, faded diplomas on the wall, a secretary who'd probably worked there since the Carter administration. James Hargrove, S.R., was the only attorney in town who wasn't connected to Whitmore's development company, mainly because he was 82 and didn't care about connections anymore. "Your father was a good man," Hargrove said, shuffling through papers with arthritic hands. "Served with my cousin in Vietnam. Delta Company, 1st Battalion. I didn't know that, Sarah said softly. Your daddy didn't talk much about the war, neither did Charlie. He found the document he was looking for. Properties in your name free and clear. No liens, no mortgages. He paid it off in 1998. The taxes are current through December. Can Whitmore force a sale? Hargrove peered at her over reading glasses. Not legally, but Brandon Whitmore isn't much concerned with legality when it doesn't suit him. His daddy was the same way, bought up half the county through pressure and backdoor deals. He leaned back in his chair, which squeaked in protest. What kind of pressure have they applied so far? Sarah told him about Whitmore's visit, Melissa's comments, the 3 men and their threats. The old lawyer's jaw tightened. That's assault and criminal intimidation. You file a report with Sheriff Dawson. Would it matter? No, he admitted. Dawson's in Whitmore's pocket, has been for years. The whole town council is. He was quiet for a moment, thinking. You know what your problem is, Captain Mitchell. I'm sure you'll tell me. A smile cracked his weathered face. You're fighting an army battle in a legal theater. Different rules. In court, it's not about who's tougher or smarter. It's about documentation, precedent, and patience. I can be patient. Can you? He studied her with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Because patience means watching them harass you, means letting them think they're winning while you build a case, means not responding when they push you. That's harder than combat sometimes. Sarah thought about the things she'd endured in interrogation training. Being yelled at, intimidated, isolated. She'd been one of only 3 women in her intelligence battalion for the first 5 years. She knew about swallowing anger. I can handle it, she said. I believe you can. Hargrove pulled out a legal pad and began writing. Here's what we do. You document everything. Every visit, every threat, every interaction. Dates, times, witnesses. We build a harassment case. Meanwhile, I'll research eminent domain laws, see if they have any legal avenue to force a sale. My guess is they don't, which is why they're trying intimidation. How long will this take? Months, maybe longer. He looked up. Can you hold out that long? Sarah thought about her savings, not much, but enough to survive for a while. She'd been doing contract work for a security company out of Atlanta, analyzing intelligence reports. The pay was decent when the work came through. I'll hold, she said. The talk started almost immediately. Sarah heard it in the grocery store, standing in the checkout line. 2 women in front of her, speaking just loud enough to be heard. I heard she threatened Brandon Whitmore with that dangerous dog of hers. Doesn't surprise me. They train those women to be aggressive. It's not natural. My husband says women shouldn't be in combat. It changes them, makes them hard. The cashier, a teenager with green hair and kind eyes, looked embarrassed as she rang up Sarah's items. Don't listen to them, she whispered. They're just gossip. It's fine, Sarah said, meaning it. Words couldn't hurt her. She'd been called worse things by better people. But the words did their work anyway. By the end of the week, half of Riverside had heard a version of the story where Sarah had threatened Whitmore with her attack dog and run him off her property with violent threats. The version where Whitmore had made an innocent offer had somehow become gospel truth. Sarah kept her head down and documented everything in a notebook, just like Hargrove had instructed. Then the small harassments began. Her mailbox was knocked over twice in 1 week. Garbage bags were dumped at the end of her driveway. Someone spray-painted "Sell Out" on the road leading to her house. Sheriff Dawson came by once, taking notes with obvious disinterest, and said it was probably kids. Kids with a specific message? Sarah asked. Teenagers these days, Dawson shrugged. I'll keep an eye out. He didn't. Sarah installed security cameras, 4 of them, covering all approaches to the house. They were the good kind, military grade, motion activated with night vision. The footage went to cloud storage where it couldn't be tampered with. 2 days later, Someone threw a rock through her kitchen window. The cameras caught 3 figures in masks, too far away to identify clearly, but she could tell from their builds they were the same men from before. She showed the footage to Dawson. "Can't tell who they are," he said, handing back her phone. "Could be anyone in masks. File an insurance claim." "You're not going to investigate." "Investigate what? 3 people in hoodies. That describes half the county's youth." He adjusted his gun belt, not meeting her eyes. "Look, Ms. Mitchell, maybe it's time to consider that offer. These problems will stop if you just cooperate with the development project. Fighting progress is like fighting the tide." "Progress," Sarah repeated flatly. "This project will bring jobs, tax revenue, tourism. You're standing in the way of the whole town's future for what? Sentiment. For what's mine?" Dawson sighed like she was a child refusing to understand basic math. "Your choice, but I can't protect you from random vandalism if you insist on making enemies." After he left, Sarah sat on her back deck with Kaiser and watched the river. The sun was setting, painting the water in shades of blood orange and purple. Her father used to say the river was the soul of Riverside, constant, steady, older than anyone's memory. Now they wanted to replace it with luxury condos and a marina where boats bigger than her house would park. Progress. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Last chance, sell or face consequences, your choice." She deleted it and added it to the log she was keeping for Hargrove. The Veterans Support Group met every Thursday night at the VFW Hall, a squat brick building behind the Methodist Church. Sarah had been attending for a month now, mostly listening, occasionally sharing. There were 7 regulars, 6 men ranging from Vietnam vets to recent Afghanistan deployments and her. Tonight she needed to talk. "They're trying to force me out of my house," she said when it was her turn. "Harassment, intimidation, vandalism. The local sheriff won't help because the man behind it has connections." Roger Templeton, a Vietnam vet who still wore his dog tags, nodded slowly. "That's how it works sometimes. People think veterans are easy targets. They think we're broken." "Are we?" asked Marcus, a younger guy who'd lost his left leg in Fallujah. He was 28 and angry at everything. "Some days," Roger admitted, "but broken doesn't mean beaten." "What are you going to do?" asked another vet, Danny Chen, Air Force, Gulf War. "Keep fighting," Sarah said. "What else can I do?" "You could leave," Marcus said bluntly. "Cut your losses, start over somewhere else." "Could you?" Sarah asked him directly. "If someone tried to take something your father left you, something he built with his hands." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "No," he finally said. "I'd burn it down before I let them have it." "That's not helpful," Roger interjected. "Sarah's fighting smart, legal, the right way." "The right way doesn't always work against people with money," Danny said. "I'm not saying do something illegal. I'm saying be prepared for them too." The group leader, a VA counselor named Patricia, steered the conversation back to coping strategies and support systems. But after the meeting, Roger pulled Sarah aside. "You need help, you call me," he said, pressing a piece of paper with his number into her hand. "Day or night, I mean it. You're not alone in this. I don't want to drag anyone else into my problems." "Too late, we're veterans. We don't leave people behind." He smiled, but it was sad. "Your daddy helped my cousin when he came back from Vietnam. Charlie had a hard time adjusting. Your father gave him work, treated him with respect when nobody else would. Family takes care of family." Sarah felt something loosen in her chest, just a fraction. "Thank you." Driving home that night, Kaiser asleep in the passenger seat, Sarah felt the weight of isolation lift slightly. She wasn't entirely alone. The veteran community might be small, but it was real. When she pulled into her driveway, her headlights caught something that made her blood run cold. Kaiser was already awake, growling. The front door of her house was wide open. Sarah killed the engine and sat for a moment, thinking tactically. She had her Glock 19 in the glove box, licensed and legal. She could call 911, wait for Dawson to show up and do nothing. Or she could handle this herself. Kaiser was quivering with tension, wanting to bolt from the truck. "Stay," she commanded quietly. She retrieved the Glock, checked the magazine, chambered a round. Then she approached the house the way she'd been trained, slow, methodical, covering angles. The security cameras would have caught whoever went inside. She'd review the footage later. Right now, she needed to clear the house. The front door had been forced. The frame was splintered where the deadbolt had torn through. Inside, the living room was destroyed. Furniture overturned, pictures smashed, her father's old recliner slashed open with a knife. The kitchen was worse. Every cabinet emptied, dishes broken, food dumped on the floor. Someone had spray-painted "Leave" across the refrigerator in red paint that dripped like blood. Sarah moved through each room, weapon ready, but the house was empty. They'd gone. This was just a message. The only room they hadn't touched was her bedroom. Instead, they'd left something on her pillow. A dead rat. And a note. "Next time it won't be a rat, Sel." Sarah stood there for a long moment, looking at the destruction of her father's home. Everything he'd built, everything he'd left her, violated and broken. She felt something shift inside her, a line crossed, a decision made. She took photos of everything, methodically documenting each room. Then she called Hargrove instead of 911. "They broke into my house," she said when he answered. "Destroyed everything, left a dead animal and a threat." "Call the sheriff." "No point. They're wearing masks on camera. Dawson won't do anything." Hargrove was quiet for a moment. "Okay, this is good." "Good." "For the case, this is felony breaking and entering, destruction of property, criminal threats. We've got them on camera. Masks or not, we can use this." His voice hardened. "File a report anyway, even if Dawson won't investigate. Create a paper trail. Then we take this to the state police, maybe the FBI if we can establish a pattern of intimidation." "How long will that take?" "I don't know," he admitted. "But Sarah, you can't stay there tonight. It's not safe. This is my home. And they've proven they can get inside. Next time you might be there, please, find somewhere else to sleep, at least for tonight." Sarah looked around at the destruction, at her father's favorite chair gutted and ruined, and felt tears threaten for the first time since the funeral. She pushed them back down, deep where they couldn't touch her. "Okay," she said, "I'll find somewhere." She ended up at a motel outside of town, Kaiser curled up on the floor beside the bed. She couldn't sleep. Every sound made her reach for the gun on the nightstand. Every pair of headlights in the parking lot might be them, coming to finish what they'd started. At 3 a.m., she pulled out her laptop and reviewed the security footage. 3 people, same builds as before, masks and gloves. They'd parked a quarter-mile up the road and walked in through the woods, avoiding the driveway cameras. Smart, but not smart enough. She had their heights, their weights, their gaits. One walked with a slight limp, the leader, the thick-necked kid. The other 2 were younger, less confident in their movements. She could identify them if she needed to. She had skills they didn't know about. 15 years in intelligence had taught her how to track people, how to build profiles, how to find anyone who didn't want to be found. But Hargrove was right. She had to do this legally. She had to trust the system, even when the system was rigged against her. The next morning, she filed a report at the sheriff's station. Dawson took her statement with obvious boredom, barely glancing at her photos. "Like I said, probably teenagers," he concluded. "Random vandalism." "Random," Sarah repeated, "with a specific message telling me to sell my house." "Coincidence." "And the dead rat." Dawson shrugged. "Kids think they're being scary. I'll add it to the file." The file that would never be investigated. The file that was probably already in Whitmore's hands. Sarah walked out of the station and sat in her truck for a long time, thinking about Marcus's words. The right way doesn't always work against people with money. But she wasn't ready to give up on the right way yet. She just needed to be smarter about it. Sarah worked alone, hauling broken furniture to the dump, patching the splintered door frame, scrubbing red paint off her refrigerator until her hands cramped. Roger offered to help, as did Danny and two other vets from the group, but she declined. This felt like something she needed to do herself. Penance, maybe, for letting them get close. For not being vigilant enough. Kaiser stayed close, anxious from the violation of their space. He growled at shadows and startled at normal sounds. She understood. The house didn't feel safe anymore. It felt contaminated. On the fourth day, she received a letter from the Riverside Planning Commission. Her property had been cited for code violations. A list of alleged problems ranging from deteriorating structure to hazardous dock to unkempt yard presenting neighborhood blight. She had 30 days to remedy all violations or face daily fines of $500. Sarah read the letter twice, her anger building with each word. The house was solid. Her father had maintained it meticulously. The dock needed some board replacement, but it wasn't hazardous. And the yard was rural riverfront property, not a suburban lawn. Unkempt was its natural state. This was retaliation, pure and simple. She called Hargrove. "They're using the Planning Commission now," he said after she read him the letter. "It's a common tactic. Bury you in violations and fines until you can't afford to stay." Can they do that? Legally, if the violations are real, yes, but these sound fabricated. We can appeal, request an independent inspection. How long will that take? Could be months, and in the meantime, the fines accumulate if you don't comply. Sarah did the math. $500 a day was $15,000 a month. She didn't have that kind of money. Nobody did. What are my options? Hargrove sighed. Comply with what you can, document everything that's frivolous and file an appeal. Fight it in court. But Sarah, he paused, this is going to get expensive. Court fees, expert witnesses, inspector fees. We're talking thousands of dollars. I don't have thousands of dollars. I know, I'm sorry. After hanging up, Sarah sat at her kitchen table for a long time, looking at the letter. The signature at the bottom was from Daniel Whitmore, Planning Commissioner, Brandon's younger brother. They had the whole system locked down. Sheriff, Planning Commission, probably the mayor and town council too. One family with enough money and connections to twist every institution to their will. And they were coming after a woman living alone on a military pension. She should have felt helpless. Instead, she felt the old familiar calm that came before combat, the stillness before action. They'd made a mistake. They'd underestimated her. They thought she would break. The inspection happened the following Tuesday. The inspector was a thin man in his 50s named Garrett, who arrived with a clipboard and an apologetic expression. "I'm sorry about this," he said quietly as they walked the property. "I'm just doing my job." "I understand." He examined the house with thoroughness that seemed genuine. The foundation, the roof, the plumbing, the electrical. He took photos, made notes, and kept glancing at her with something that might have been sympathy. When they reached the dock, he knelt to examine the boards. "Some of these are rotted," he said. "Need replacing, but it's not hazardous. You've got maybe a year before it becomes a real safety issue. Will you put that in your report?" He met her eyes. "I'll put exactly what I find, nothing more, nothing less." At the end of 3 hours, Garrett packed up his equipment and hesitated. "Off the record," he said quietly. "Okay. Most of these violations are bullshit. Your house is solid, better than half the properties in this county. Someone's leaning on the commission to come after you." He looked around at the river, the trees, the peaceful land. "This is a good piece of property, prime riverfront. I can see why they want it. But you can't help me." I can write an honest report. That's all I can do. The commission will do what they want with it. He started toward his truck, then turned back. For what it's worth, I think you should fight. People like the Whitmores, they've been running this county like their personal kingdom for too long. Someone needs to stand up to them. Easy to say, harder to do. I know. He climbed into his truck. Good luck, Captain Mitchell, you're going to need it. Sarah watched him drive away, then walked down to the river. Kaiser followed, sensing her mood. The water was high from recent rains, moving fast and brown with sediment. Her father used to say you could read the river's mood by its color. Brown meant it was angry, churning up old secrets from the bottom. She felt the same way. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, probably the same one as before. Running out of time. Take the offer or lose everything. She deleted it, added it to the log. That night she couldn't sleep again. She lay in her father's old house, her house, listening to it settle and creak. Every sound was a potential threat. Every shadow through the window could be them coming back. Around 2 a.m., Kaiser started barking. Sarah was out of bed instantly, gun in hand, moving to the window. A vehicle was parked at the end of her driveway, headlights off. As she watched, someone got out and approached the house. Her finger moved to the trigger, heart pounding. Then she recognized the walk, Roger Templeton. She opened the door before he could knock. What are you doing here? Couldn't sleep, thought I'd do a patrol. He gestured to his truck. Danny's with me. We're taking shifts, watching your place at night. You don't have to do that. Yeah, we do. His voice was firm. You're one of us, and we've all had enough of the Whitmores pushing people around. He smiled slightly. Besides, what else am I going to do? Watch TV? I've seen every episode of Gunsmoke 3 times. Sarah felt her throat tighten. Thank you. Don't mention it. Get some sleep, Captain. We've got your 6. She went back to bed and, for the first time in days, actually slept. The harassment intensified. Someone slashed her truck tires while she was grocery shopping. The store's security camera was malfunctioning that day. Cost her $300 to replace them. Her contract work from the Atlanta security company suddenly dried up. When she called her supervisor, he was apologetic but clear. We've been advised to discontinue our relationship with you, he said. I can't say more than that. I'm sorry, Sarah. Advised by who? I've said all I can say. Good luck to you. She knew Whitmore had connections in Atlanta too. He was cutting off her income, isolating her financially. The Planning Commission's report came back. 7 violations confirmed, remedy required within 30 days, fines to begin accumulating if not addressed. The violations were mostly minor but expensive. New dock boards, gutter replacement, foundation repointing, fence repair. Hargrove estimated $8,000 to $10,000 to comply with everything. Sarah had $4,200 in savings. We can appeal, Hargrove said. We've got a good case, but appeals take time. Time I don't have if the fines start. I know. He leaned back in his chair, looking old and tired. They're boxing you in. Classic squeeze play. Financially, legally, socially. They want you desperate enough to take whatever they offer. What would you do, Sarah asked, if you were me? He was quiet for a long moment. I'd fight. But then again, I'm an old man with nothing to lose. You're young enough to start over somewhere else. I'm 43. Like I said, young, he smiled sadly. But Sarah, you need to understand something. Even if you win legally, you lose practically. They'll make your life here miserable. Every permit, every license, every interaction with local government will be a battle. Is this house worth that? She thought about her father building this place board by board. Thought about him sitting on the deck at sunset, watching the river. Thought about his grave at Riverside Cemetery under the oak tree. Yes, she said, it's worth it. The attack came on a Friday night. Sarah was working on the dock, replacing boards in the fading light. Kaiser lay nearby, dozing. The veterans had been rotating shifts watching the house, but tonight was Roger's night off, and she'd told them she'd be fine for one evening. She was wrong. They came through the woods again, 3 of them, but this time they didn't try to hide. They wanted her to see them. Kaiser started barking, charging toward them. Sarah dropped her hammer and ran, screaming for him to come back, but he was trained to protect, and he knew a threat when he saw one. The leader, the thick-necked kid she recognized even without the mask, pulled something from his jacket. A bat, aluminum heavy. "Kaiser, come," Sarah screamed. The dog hesitated, torn between obedience and duty. That hesitation cost him. The bat came down hard on Kaiser's back leg. The sound of breaking bone was distinct and horrible. Kaiser yelped, a sound of pain and betrayal that tore through Sarah like shrapnel. She was moving before she thought, crossing the distance in seconds. Training took over, muscle memory from 100 training sessions, 1,000 drills. She grabbed the bat on the backswing, twisted, used the kid's own momentum to throw him off balance. He went down hard, surprised. The other 2 moved in, and Sarah's world narrowed to targets and threats. A punch to the throat of the one on her left, knee to the groin of the one on her right. They hadn't expected her to fight back, hadn't expected her to know how. But the leader was bigger and stronger, and he got to his feet, swinging wild. The bat caught her shoulder, sending lightning bolts of pain down her arm. She fell back, and he advanced, raising the bat for another swing. A gunshot cracked across the river. Everyone froze. Roger stood at the edge of the woods, hunting rifle pointed at the sky. "Next one goes center mass," he said calmly. "Your choice, boys." They ran, dropped the bat, and scattered into the woods like the cowards they were. Roger lowered the rifle and hurried over. "You okay?" "Kaiser," Sarah gasped, crawling to where her dog lay whimpering. His back leg was bent at an unnatural angle, already swelling. He looked at her with eyes full of pain and confusion, not understanding why someone had hurt him. "We need to get him to a vet," Roger said. "Now." The emergency vet clinic in the next county over confirmed what Sarah already knew. Kaiser's leg was broken in 2 places. Surgery would cost $3,000. Without it, the leg might heal wrong. He might never walk properly again, might have to be put down if the pain became too severe. Sarah sat in the sterile waiting room with her head in her hands, shoulder throbbing, and felt something break inside her that had nothing to do with bones. They'd beaten her dog, her one companion, her family. And she couldn't afford to fix him. Roger sat beside her, quiet and solid. After a while he said, "I've got some money put aside. Not much, but—" "No," Sarah's voice was hollow. "I can't ask you to do that." "You're not asking, I'm offering." "Roger, your father helped Charlie when nobody else would. Let me help you." He pulled out his wallet, produced a worn check. $3,000, it's yours. "I can't pay you back." "Don't want you to, consider it a gift." He pressed the check into her hand. "Save your dog, Sarah. Don't let them take that from you too." She looked at the check, at Roger's weathered face, and felt tears finally break through. She'd held them back at her father's funeral, held them back through all the harassment and threats. But this kindness from someone who barely knew her, shattered the dam. She cried silently while Roger sat beside her, one hand on her shoulder, and didn't say anything because there was nothing to say. Kaiser came through the surgery. The vet said he'd heal, though he might always have a limp. Sarah sat with him in recovery, stroking his head while he slept off the anesthesia, and made a